Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Luke, a CFA Charterholder. Today we're going to be discussing leverage and the concept of companies taking on more and more debt, which is a key component of the corporate issuers section of the material. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so before we define leverage, let's just first think about how companies are financed in their early stages. So when a company is in its infancy, i.e. it's just getting started, it will typically be financed using equity only. So startups, firms that are in their early growth stages, in the first couple of years of their life cycle, will typically be 100% equity finance. So they'll have no debt in their capital structure. And the reason why is because they're typically unprofitable and have highly volatile cash flows. So they'll be not generating any operating profit that would be able to service the debt and make debt payments. And their cash flows, even if they're positive, will be, which they rarely are, they'll be very volatile. So not only will they be unable to make their debt interest payments, banks will also be very, very nervous about lending to them because the volatility in cash flow is not something that lenders look for. They want to lend to companies that've got stability, they've got consistent profits and consistent cash flows. So banks typically won't go near very, very early stage companies because they're just too unstable, too volatile, too high risk. So they tend to be 100% equity financed. As businesses grow, they hopefully become profitable and their cash flows will stabilize and become much more predictable. And as a result, banks will get much more comfortable lending to the firm, and then the business will take on debt. And the financing structure will become a mixture of debt and equity. So yeah, once the company matures and gets through its early growth stage, it will hopefully turn a profit and its cash flow profile will stabilize and it will be generating consistent positive cash flows. And those cash flows will be able to comfortably make debt interest and or principal payments. And once the firm's generating those cash flows, the bank will be much more comfortable when it comes to lending debt to the company. So the company will start raising debt and its capital structure will become it will no longer be 100% equity, it will be a nice blend of debt and equity. And effectively taking on debt is what leveraging the company is referring to. So let's formally define it. So leverage is the amount of debt a company takes on relative to its equity. So what kind of ratios would we be thinking of? So you can think of the leverage ratio. So as the proportion of debt relative to equity is increasing, the leverage ratio increases. You've also got sort of debt to capital ratio. Again, as the proportion of debt in the capital structure increases, these kind of ratios will be increasing, and that is the sign that the company is taking on more and more debt relative to its equity, which is effectively what leverage is. So if the firm has a high ratio of debt to equity, they're described as being highly leveraged, or levered. Levered is another way to describe it. Whereas if they have a low ratio of debt to equity, they're described as having a low level of leverage. Yeah, so when you think about leverage, think about the leverage ratio, debt to equity. What's that looking like? If there's a significant proportion of debt in the capital structure relative to equity, then we'd probably think of the firm as being highly levered. So what's the impact of leverage on shareholders? So taking on debt has a direct impact on the company's shareholders. If the business performs well, leveraging can have a positive impact for shareholders as it amplifies their returns. So yeah, leverage can have a really positive impact for a company if it leads to an increase in revenue because there's less equity being supplied by the shareholders. They're using capital provided by banks. So there'll be more excess profit being generated, which will flow through to the shareholders. yet they'll be contributing less equity. The capital won't be coming from them, it will come from the debt. So if you think about it from an ROE perspective, where ROE equals profit over equity. Yeah, if the business outperforms and you're leveraging, your profit will increase. You'll have a net increase because your revenue will be increasing. You will be paying more in interest expense, but let's just say you've got a positive impact on your numerator, and you'll be committing less in equity because your capital structure will be no longer 100% equity. It will include some debt, so your equity will go down. So the net impact can be really positive on your returns if you leverage, and that leads to a positive impact on business performance if the business performs well. However, if the business performs poorly, this is where it can all go wrong. Leverage can have a very negative impact for shareholders. It can destroy shareholder returns, and it's effectively the inverse. It can amplify their losses, so profits can fall, and increase the risk of company bankruptcy. So if you leverage up the company and it subsequently underperforms, i.e. revenues fall, then the profit will fall materially, which will lead to ROE having a huge decline, and can definitely lead to increased risk of insolvency, inability to generate the cash flows that are required to meet debt payments, and then you kind of enter into bankruptcy as a result. So leverage has you can look at it through a positive or a negative lens. It can amplify upside, shareholder upside, but it can also amplify the risk to shareholders. So if you leverage up a company and the business subsequently performs really well, then shareholders can earn huge returns. But if you leverage up a company and it subsequently underperforms and revenue drops, then shareholders can make huge losses. So leverage is a tool that needs to be used carefully and with consideration for the upside and the downside. And yeah, it can have a material impact on the returns that shareholders can earn by investing in a company. So that's everything I wanted to cover. That's leverage in a nutshell. Hopefully that made sense. Any more questions, feel free to fire them off in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video.